They say forests breathe, that if you listen close enough, you can hear them whisper, groan, sigh. But some forests do more than breathe. Some forests watch. And when Officer Haley Rivera crossed in a Northwind Preserve that day, she stepped into the eye of something ancient, something that had been waiting for a very long time. The sun hung low in the early autumn sky, its golden rays cutting through the thick canopy of pines and maples. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Not even a usual rustle of squirrels or chirping of chickadees could be heard. A stillness blanketed the landscape, heavy and unnatural. Officer Haley Rivera, one of the most seasoned canine handlers in the state, stood near the edge of the Northwind Preserve with her two trusted companions, Max and Juno, elite German shepherds trained in search and rescue. Today wasn't supposed to be a mission. It was just a routine patrol. But the silence had teeth, and it bit deep. Max, the older of the two, stiffened first. His ears perked, his muzzle lifted. A low growl rumbled from his throat, not aggressive, alert. Juno, younger but keenly intelligent, mirrored his posture, nose twitching as she scented the air. Haley adjusted the strap on her gear and looked around. "What is it, boy?" she asked Max. He barked once, sharp and focused, then took off toward the tree line. Juno followed without hesitation. They moved fast, weaving through brush and brambles like shadows. Haley pushed herself to keep up. Her boots thudded against the mossy ground, her breath coming harder with every step. A sinking feeling settled into her stomach. She trusted these dogs with her life. If they were acting like this, something was seriously wrong. 5 minutes into the forest, they found the H-8T was half buried in leaves, brown with the distinctive insignia of a forest ranger. Haley crouched, picked it up, and turned it in her hands. "No," she whispered. "Not again." The dogs growled low and started circling a wide maple tree. Haley followed their gaze and froze. There, bound with rusted chains to the massive trunk, was a man, emaciated, bruised, bloodied. His uniform was barely intact, shirt in tatters, badge covered in dried blood. His head hung low, his chest rising and falling in weak, shallow breaths. He looked like a corpse, until he moaned that Haley's heart lodged in her throat. She raced forward. "Hey, can you hear me?" She knelt beside him, checked his pulse. Weak but there. "Max, go get help," she commanded. The dog hesitated. He didn't want to leave, but barked once and vanished into the trees. Juno stayed, laying beside the man and licking his bruised hand gently, as if trying to comfort him. Haley worked fast, pulling out bolt cutters and trying to snap the chains. They were old, corroded, but not easy to break. "Who did this to you?" she asked in a low voice, unsure if he could hear. His lips moved, cracked and bleeding. No sound came out. Then, finally, he whispered something. "Not alone," she paused. "What? Who's not alone?" His eyes fluttered open, blue, feverish, filled with pain and terror. "They're still here." Then his body went limp. Haley's training kicked in. She checked for vitals. He was still alive, but barely. She needed to move fast. Juno barked loudly. An alarm bark, not just a signal. The hair on the back of Haley's neck stood up. From deep within the trees, she heard something unnatural, a faint clicking like bones tapping against bark. Then silence again. She looked down at the ranger. Who was he? What happened to him? And what did he mean? "They're still here." Max returned 15 minutes later with 2 more rangers and paramedics. Together, they cut the chains, carefully lifted the unconscious man onto a stretcher, and began the trek back out of the forest. Before leaving, Haley snapped a photo of the tree. Something felt off about it. A symbol had been carved into the bark near where the man had been chained, a crude spiral with jagged lines radiating from its center. She didn't recognize it, but it made her skin crawl. The following days were a blur of interviews, reports, medical updates. The ranger's name was Thomas Acker. He had disappeared 7 months ago while on patrol. Search parties had combed Northwind Preserve for weeks with no results. No trace. Until now. But how had he survived all this time? Who had done this to him? And why? As Thomas lay unconscious in the hospital, guarded around the clock, strange things began happening. Nurses reported seeing dark figures out of the corner of their eyes. The security system recorded static at exactly 3:13 a.m. every night. Once, a guard swore he heard someone whispering Thomas's name in the hallway when no one was there. Haley stayed close, feeling a responsibility she couldn't quite explain. She visited Thomas daily, sometimes bringing Max and Juno, hoping their presence would somehow ground him. That on the seventh night, Thomas woke up. The forest was no longer quiet. As the weeks passed since the discovery of the chained ranger, whispers began to stir among the trees. Not the supernatural kind, but the kind that spread through ranger stations, hospitals, and law enforcement departments like wildfire. The man's name was Thomas Acker, a veteran ranger who had gone missing nearly 7 months earlier. Search efforts had failed. No trace, no leads, just a strange report months back about eerie symbols and odd disturbances near the northern perimeter of the preserve. Everyone had assumed the worst, but somehow, impossibly, he had survived, kept alive by some dark miracle or cruel purpose no one yet understood. And now, as he lay in the hospital clinging to life, refusing to speak more than a few broken words, the only real witnesses to the horror were Haley Rivera's K9s, Max and Juno. The dogs had changed since the rescue. Quieter, on edge, especially Juno, who refused to enter wooded areas, even in her own training fields. She'd stare at trees, as if she could still hear something hidden in the bark. Haley knew trauma changed animals just like humans, but this was different. Juno whimpered in her sleep, sometimes yelping in panic, waking Haley in the middle of the night with her muzzle nudging Haley's arm like a frightened child. Meanwhile, Ranger Acker's condition improved slowly. He remained under strict observation, guarded not just for his safety, but because there were still too many questions. Who had done this? And why? There were no ransom notes, no enemies. He hadn't been working any controversial cases, at least none on record. But then one morning, Acker finally spoke. Only Haley was in the room, her presence a comfort perhaps because of the dogs. His voice was gravel, dry and ragged. "It's in the forest," he said. "It waits for us." Haley leaned in. "What waits?" Acker's eyes didn't meet hers. They stared past her, fixed on something unseen. They called it the Hollow Man. "It's not a man. It wears men." Haley froze. "Who's they?" "The ones who followed it. The cult." He coughed hard, wheezing through cracked lips. "They chained me there as an offering. I wasn't the first." A chill rolled down her spine. "Where? Where are they now?" "Gone. Maybe watching. They think the forest belongs to him. They serve it. Sacrifice to it. Blood for bark," they said. Haley recorded the conversation and left the room shaken. That night, she reviewed older ranger files, old complaints from hikers, mysterious disappearances, a few unsolved animal mutilations. The deeper she dug, the more the pattern emerged. Always around the same area. Always near the old-growth sector known as Black Hollow. The name itself felt like an omen. With approval from command, a deeper investigation launched. Rangers, local police, even a federal agent with knowledge of fringe cults joined in. They found remnants in the hollow, a collapsed campsite, shreds of clothing, tools arranged in circular patterns, bones from small animals, and in the center, another spiral carved into a rotted stump. And a name, barely legible in the dirt. R. Moore, a former ranger, reported missing in 1998, presumed dead, now suspected to be the first sacrifice. That night, Juno began howling uncontrollably. Max joined in, pacing the house, ears back, hackles raised. Haley felt something was coming, and she was right. The following morning, Ranger Acker was gone. No forced entry, no surveillance breach, just his bed empty, restraints snapped like twine. And one final message, scratched into the hospital wall with something sharp and rusty. "We never leave the forest." Panic surged through the department. The forest was combed again. The dogs led the search, Juno trembling but determined, Max urgent and angry. They found blood near the same tree. Fresh. Then a boot. Then a torn sleeve. And then they heard it, low, almost like wind. But it wasn't wind. It was whispering. Too rhythmic. Too intentional. Haley called out. No response. Then Juno ran ahead, barking wildly, desperate. Max followed. They disappeared into the mist. When Haley caught up minutes later, she found them both in a clearing, standing beside another chained figure. But it wasn't Acker. It was a woman, early 30s, alive but unconscious, and the spiral symbol etched into her skin. She was saved, brought out, but Acker was never found. Search efforts were called off weeks later. Officially, he vanished. Unofficially, some say he walked back into the forest willingly, and that the forest accepted him. Max and Juno were awarded commendations for their bravery. But Juno never returned to duty. She spent her last years curled at Haley's side, ever watchful of shadows, flinching at the sound of trees rustling. Max retired a year later, grayer and quieter. And Haley? She still walks the Northwind Preserve every week. And every time she passes that tree, the one where Acker was found,